stream basically where I'm going to be doing a series of flowers. I'm thinking of doing A to Z at this point. You know, it's not too large a series, it's only 26. Um, and we're going to start, you know, we've got a very small canvas here. All we have is an 8 by 10. So, you know, it shouldn't be too difficult to power through, get a decent painting done within, you know, a few hours time, and be able to move on to the next. So that, you know, when we're doing a large series of paintings like this, it can be very difficult to get them all done. I did a series of 50 paintings, and, you know, by the end it was just arduous. And to imagine doing a larger form, such as well, what did I say, maybe a 16 by 20, then you would be, oh, it's a lot more paint, it's a lot more to do, it's a lot more work to try to make, you know, functional. But let's start out. We're just going to take some chalk here, and we're going to try to make a bit of the image that we're seeing over on the other side here. Mostly to give us an outline for the image that we're trying to attain. And when you're using chalk, you can be fairly liberal because your paints are going to usually overdo or subdue them anyway. Though with some colors, you know, like these heavy greens, it can be difficult sometimes to get the colors to fade if you overdo them too much. So let's just do something like that, and then let's try to reinstate it up at the top, coming down and breaking away like that. Okay, so that's fine. Let's just continue moving on. We may want to, yeah, for now what we'll do, we'll just throw in a little bit of colors, helping us to later define where everything is. And really we're just going to try to, you know, basically copy most of the color schemes and patterns. We don't need to copy every image, but it's nice to copy some of the color schemes and patterns because it makes it so you don't have to think about shading on your own basis. Okay, so let me see if there's something else here for these. It's a blue. Is that a black there? There's a black. Okay. Let's try and just do a quick edge outline of, you know, the flower here itself. Let's do that, and then I got a larger. Again, just trying to make some type of an outline, give ourselves a little bit more to work with when we're looking at the image. And you know, every single flower, every single image, every single thing that you'll ever look at uh, has its own uniqueness, its own kind of value, its own interesting shapes and definements. And it's not even important that you actually outline all of those shapes and definements. What's important is that you try to hold true to, I guess, the ratios and the kind of standardizations that, you know, occur within the sphere of nature. And if you can hold to some of those kind of standardizations and those ratios, then what you'll have is a good image anyway, even if it's not a completely copied image. That may not be as true or as valuable a statement when you are attempting to do images of people, as those tend to have a much higher gradient for perfection, or a much higher need for that gradient of perfection to be attained in order for someone to, you know, be able to say, yes, that's me in that image there. All right, so let's see. It's not the worst outline. I was doing it mostly so that we could continue our shading, but it will probably, you know, define this painting a lot more than you recognize now. However, it's not a bad start for, you know, this. This is a completely legitimate start. Some things about that top one that's going to be fun to have to fight with later. And, you know, another thing that's kind of important is that, you know, as much as I said there's something bad about the color green for how strong it is, the color black is massively stronger when it comes to shading and charcoal. So be very careful with it when you are attempting to use it for your base level shades. Alright, so and it's also nice, I'm using these heavy charcoal or this heavy piece of charcoal here. Let's see. So, you know, that's not necessarily the best way to go. Your fingers are getting a lot of charcoal on them. And you can't sharpen it very easily. However, my other charcoal pens are starting to get a little bit small and annoying to deal with, so when I decided to do this, I just saw this, the charcoal there, and it was pretty obvious to me that I should use it instead. But having said that, I mean, you can see that your hands get a little bit charcoaly, and that is to be expected. But you'll also see later, as we're applying some of the colors here, the whites and whatnot, for the pinks and whatever other colors we may need, that all of these shades are really going to be much more pronounced and beautiful because of this charcoal work. And this is, you know, some of the basic old master style that you are going to need to attain in order to do faces and the shading regarding, you know, intricate areas of the face. And you know what's difficult is that you kind of have to do it, post or pre doing the painting, right? I mean, here you are, you're doing a painting, and you can see that what I've got there is not quite what we've got over there. And to that point, again, it looks to me like it's a lot of this guy here needing to kind of circle inward. But we'll make it work later, and you can always do that very easily with paintings. So let's go ahead and add this little nub here. Let's add another nub over on the other side. Looks like some kind of a leaf that's coming off of it. Let's see, we can add some of these little fun things down here. Color them in later with some browns, it looks like. Okay, what have we got? Maybe a little nub coming off of here. Maybe forward and with a couple extra branching. And then the larger. Okay. And then we'll take our dirty finger here instead of the clean one. They're both probably pretty covered in soot right now, but all the same. Alright. So then we'll need to do, guess we've got a little bit of something going off of over here. It's got its own, thing going. And we'll add a little bit of dark on each side. And then we'll fill it in with a little bit of rubbing here. Maybe a little too much dark added there on each side, but that's fine. And that does look like a new bloom over on that side, just like this one looks like a new bloom over here. So that's pretty much as we could have hoped for there. See, what have we got over here that we can maybe make a little bit more nuanced? Alright, something like that. Something like that. Let's just fill it in with a little bit of darkness here. Alright. And then again, here we are. Okay. So, looking fine, looking good. Maybe define this a tiny bit over here. We got some weird three-prong thing in just white. Okay, we'll try and find on the other side here. Very odd looking. Okay, and yeah, just throw in a couple more colors for the black wherever we see them. And we'll try and just break those down a little bit. Okay, so far so good. Nothing too exciting, nothing to be too excited about, but you can see that, we're working towards something. We'll go ahead and put this black down here. We've got a whole slew of colors here that we could work with. I'll show you even those here. So we've got plenty of colors to work with chalk. We don't need to do too much more chalk, but we do need to do some more greens. And we'll take this lime green here, and we'll start to help define some of these areas back here a little bit more. And we probably will end up using our finger that has, that's covered in soot, because that finger is, going to help give a little bit more contrast and shade and shadow to all of the areas that we help to spread these other lighter colors in. However, why don't we try our best to get as many definitional points as we can with these other colors first. Then we can, you know, and by these other colors I mean other greens as well. So we're going to do that real quick. Again, we're trying not to spend too much time on this particular area because painting does take quite a long time to do. So, let's get this darker green in here for one more run. And it needs to be here. It needs to be over here a little bit. It needs to be here, it looks like. It needs to be here. It needs to be over on this edge here. Inside here, it looks like there's some other colorations happening, so we won't do too much. Let's try to strengthen these areas here. We might need to get some browns in here as well. And then we'll get some greens in where there isn't other colors in some of these areas. Okay, and then let's get some browns. Some lighter browns. Not sure if this, oh, that's a pink. Good God. It's got some black, you know, mixed into it, so it looks almost brownish. That might do. Get just a little cuttings of some lighter browns in here. They're going to get mixed with these blacks that are against my hand right now. So let's get some of those in here and some in even some of these stocky areas here. Yeah, that'll look fine. And then we'll get some more in the stocky areas that won't be moved quite as much. Again, stocky areas up here. Okay, and finally we need a pink. We did have a pink in our hand, and here it is. And a pink over here to help define that. Now we're going to take our finger, which has hopefully still got a good enough amount of black to help us spread some of these without it just overwhelming. And, well, I'd say that, you know, it'll probably be fine. If anything, we could almost take a little bit of some black charcoal and put it on our finger, but really, as you're seeing when I'm spreading this, it kind of looks just fine. We're getting a nice, you know, kind of beautiful, you know, look already. And then once we go and we apply our paints, we'll have ourselves a nice working, you know, area to kind of help us justify where exactly we're putting our paints. So, here we are. And let's see, not doing too bad on drop frames or anything else. I think we've got a pretty good, you know, overall images going so far here. Alright, it's just a lot of work to, you know, spread some of these so that they look what I would say is very reasonable and legible. Because you're not wanting these things to be too powerful, you know, again, you know, this is like almost the first, well, it's not really, I guess, the first layer since the primer does exist there, but it is, you know, a layer which helps to define the paint and helps you kind of define what it is that you're trying to do as well. So, that's good. Should feel pretty good about that. If anything, we may want to just run over some of the lines, but really, I'll be able to run them over with the colors. So it doesn't seem too valuable. All of this seems very nice. It seems very uh, well blended. You can see where we're going, what we're intending to do. And I feel like, we're probably going to be just fine here. This looks within the pall, within what one would call reasonable. So I have some paints here. I've got some paint brushes all over. Got our larger thing of white right here. You're always going to need that when you are painting. You don't always need a larger, not at least this large. You can get one of the smaller for, black, because it's a more powerful color and you use it less to darken things, as you can use other colors as well to darken things. But white you often have to use for a great many things, and that is due to the fact that it will help to lighten and make everything kind of work and be functional. Now I'm trying to find a nice kind of rosy reddish color. This says rose. Oh, that's very pink. Okay, we'll probably work with that. All right. So what we're going to start off doing is we're just going to try to get some definition here on some of our areas. We probably need some greens here as well. Let's see, emerald green's probably fine. Oh, that's not good. Emerald green here. Let's see if I can find that without too much fight. Alright, well. What fun. Okay, so, anyway, I have some other ones that are completely out that I can just replace the cap for emerald green with. So, we'll do that. Alright, some greens. We got white, so we can do a lot. Phthalo green is kind of a blue green. We don't really want phthalo green. Russian green, I guess, kind of looks like Hooker's green. Hooker's green is a nice green if you are shopping for individual colors. So here we got just a couple of, paints. Not much. We can use the reds up in the upper left corner as well as for our highlights on the flower itself. So why don't we try to do a little bit of definitions here, and let's get some things done. What type of a paintbrush are we wanting? Probably a very small one, so that we don't have to, go back and fight, things, because we've kind of made something already. And so we're trying to work off of what we've made, basically. And see, so you can see how you can pull the charcoal to help you define your image, and to help give you some much needed shading. And then you can again apply more paint, and you can get it so that you are within another area of charcoal. And you can see how this kind of just works. And so then what you're going to want to try to do, at least in this kind of old master technique where you're trying to pull charcoal, is that eventually you're going to find yourself with the shading and the charcoal areas that you want. And so you're going to take some larger amounts of paint, and you're going to try to use those areas of shading to help define while you are giving your painting the actual correct color that you want it to have. And you know, this counts for anything that we're going to be doing in the coming times with all these greens and whatnot. If anything, it could be said that that you may want to do everything just in black, and then use the lights and the colors of the paints in combination with the black and charcoal to make your properly shaded and looking image. And I'd agree with that technique as well. What we did here was something to make it so that we had a bit of a template while we were painting, so that it was actually easier. Easier is not necessarily better, and in this instance that I'm talking about, I think that's where it would be true. Because whereas, we have made it so we have the easier path by having kind of a template of where our colors are supposed to go, it would have been better to just do it all in black and white and use the colors while we were looking to do the work. Now, having said that, we still have the image there, and we'll look at it constantly as we're doing this work. And you can see as I'm putting in these white areas here against the charcoal that we're starting to develop a paint layer over the charcoal, which will be valuable, as these are acrylics. They'll dry fairly quickly. And so now I'm going to take a tiny bit of this red, try to apply it into this paint layer. And we still have, hopefully, a bit of charcoal and other things, mixing in and creating a little bit more contrast. And there, see, so here we have a pretty decent starting petal. We're going to have to do a lot of work to make it so that it has, the proper definitions in one way or another in its comparison to its, corresponding petals. But let's try to do that now. Let's see. Big, strong, petal here is kind of overtaking this other one, but it needs to have, it's a white on white thing, so you need to have, some definition through texture. And so we're going to try to put on a lot of extra paint in just this one area here to make it so that there's the textured obviousness that this is above the other piece. And yeah, it's probably enough. Hopefully when we add in our reds, we will find that the texturing is going to be enough to boost that into looking like we would hope it would. And if not, we will do a little bit of work to fix it. This is painting after all. This is a very, very easy thing where, you can see that I thought like that charcoal line was a little bit off, so just put on a little bit extra paint there. Bring it back to the place where you think the line's supposed to be. And then you can kind of lay off on the larger amount of paint, and hopefully you can start to, pull some of this charcoal over and make a little bit more definition, a little bit more contrast. You also, I have no black on here right now, but you see if we put any black paint on there, which we probably will later on to help try to define, you'll see that it just is immensely powerful, and you need to be very careful. It's like the charcoal times 1,000. And especially with oil paintings, it can be incredibly difficult to rein in too much, black color when we are talking about, trying to mix it to add shading. Especially with oils. With acrylics, you can wait and you can let it dry, and then you can cover it with something else as long as there's enough. And you should get whatever desired effect you need. And you can see that with the charcoal, there's a nice, simple kind of, shading that's being added. Not enough shading, obviously, to do exactly what we would want. But it's alright. We're going to go back, like I said. We could even do that with these reds right here while I've got a lot on the brush, and try to... And yeah, see, it's starting to look very much like it should. Now, I probably won't continue this on everyone because I would probably prefer to be using a liner brush for this particular thing. In fact, I kind of don't even want to finish this one. Just going to do that just for looks. And yeah, it does look good. So that is at least nice. But yeah, as a point of interest, we're going to be using a liner brush for those smaller areas, as we should be, because frankly the liner brush is much more useful for such a small endeavor as that could be said to be. Sorry, my brain takes a little bit of time to process when I'm painting here. I can only do so many thought processes at the same time. So here we are. Got ourselves a couple of nice, couple of nice images so far. Probably need more whites on there. You can see how may have added too much reds. That's fine. You can just add a little bit of, white and some texturing. And if we feel like, there is too much reds, well, then we can also just wait. And we can go back to that particular petal later. With that in mind, why don't we continue on? And we'll be doing all of those, branching bits of the flower in a bit of time. Of course, they are on top of all of these other images, so these images need to be finished first in order for things to make sense. And, we're not covering up too much, so it doesn't matter that we're finishing the image beforehand. Nor will we have it in a truly finished state before we do those other things and then end up doing our touch-ups. So, with that in mind, let me see if I can just turn that a little. There we are. With that in mind, it should be no big deal. See, this has a very clean turn and movement. This turns upward. Okay. So this is why it's very important for you to kind of keep your eye on the actual image you're trying to paint, because you may have you're giving yourself what I would say are outlines with your charcoal. Um, and those outlines are not necessarily right. So let's move on to the next. I feel as if these other ones here may have just been overemphasized in these red colors. And, seeing this other one with more whites, that it looks better, and we need to maybe let the white settle and dry, and then we can add some red highlights with our liner brush. So this one is a little bit more complex. Why don't we start at the bottom, because we know what the bottom looks like in comparison to the one next to it. And then we're going to go up and we're going to cut inward. Against the coloration there, and we are going to finish cutting inward by going up like this and rolling around like that. And then this is cutting downward. Okay. And it's actually fine on that side. Okay. Yeah. Very nice. Very nice indeed, And, you say to yourself, you can see why painting is a thankless, hobby. Because, this is a half hour of work. I could do a lot of things in a half hour potentially, but, this isn't a lot for what it's worth. And it's just, it is as fast as it is, That's the problem with the ideal of painting in general, I suppose, is that it takes a very, very long time to do any of these things, sometimes 60 hours or more. We're going to ideally be getting this finished in under 3 hours time. But the idea that, you could be doing some very, very complex work and it would take a very long period of time is not outside of the realm of reality. Absolutely not at all. It can take forever to do a painting. It really can. Alright, so we're at the point now where I kind of need to pick this up and start turning it around and doing things. Looks good though. It's coming together incredibly well for the short period of time that we've been working on it. Really, really basic old master techniques, and not even really well-defined ones either. Because like I said, you would probably prefer to do the remainder of the painting in black and white completely. Now you'll see that my hands are going to get covered in all of this, charcoal regardless. So there's no real point. You can see it, yeah. So if it was, black and white, it would, you'd just have a lot more black charcoal, I suppose, and you can what can end up being a problem with that is that you can end up smudging and causing some real issues. Now you can do that the same with this, charcoal that I'm doing now. So I'm being a little bit foolish in attempting to say that it's better. But at least my hand where it is now is just consistently smearing this green instead of making an overemphasis of, you know, a bunch of black charcoal, which then I would have to spread or remove in some other way. And even then, it all is, it is what it is. It can be difficult to paint something. Maybe if you're standing up and you are, you know, not intending on painting for long periods, you can keep your hand from floating on the canvas. Something you have to do later on anyway when you are painting a painting, because you can't obviously let your hand float and then spread paint. But you know, that's also why you do paintings in, you know, areas usually. So this one again seems like it's got a overarchingness on this one here. I think I helped find that pretty well. You can see though that this one here needs to just be bigger. Yeah, something like that. And probably more on the other end, huh? More on the back end too. Something like that. Okay, so now let's try to do this inner area. Basically, trying to put in some white color while allowing some definite, you know, areas of shade so that it's clear and obvious that there are two areas there. Let's try and put a little bit more definition over here. There it is. Okay, let's see. What have we got to do now? We're not in love with all of this heavy black shading, but it is helping to make some definition. So we need to probably get out the liner brush. First time we're cleaning a brush in this entire time we've been doing anything this entire damn day. Looking, I really, I want some more white on some of these areas here. You know, some of them, they have definition, but it's because there just isn't enough paint. And that's not a good reason to have definition. So, that's not so bad now. Yeah, okay. So that's not so bad now. Alright, let's see. Okay. So that's looking a lot better now. What we need to do is obviously we need to draw in some of these really heavy reds that we see in the actual picture. And to do that, we are gonna re-clean this now that we've put a little bit more whites on some of these areas that felt a little bit dry. And we're gonna put on those heavier reds with a liner brush. See, so this brush is a normal style of paintbrush, whereas this brush here is a liner brush. You know, meant probably to make lines. So we are going to take this red here, I'm going to take some whites in there as well. We're going to try to make a hue which is, I don't know, commensurate with what we're seeing. Going to be a little bit difficult. We may need to find another red here. Let's see. Or maybe some browns. There's some burnt sienna here mixed in with these reds. Gosh, you know, the thing is, that's like a darkened red. So do we have... take some violet as well. Take a little bit of violet here to try to make this color, because that's a little bit darker than the reds we're working with here. So again, we got just a simple liner brush. We're trying to make a hue which is kind of commensurate with the kind of magenta thing that we're looking at there. It is not easy when you don't have what I'd say is, you know, an exact color match, because it can be very hard to put in, you know, just the right amount of whatever color it is that you do have available. And man, see, like this violet is a very dark violet, and I'm using acrylic, so I'm having to help spread it with just water here. And when you're using a liner brush, of course, you have to always go and put a little bit of water on it just to make it so that the paint will spread it all. That's not so bad. That's a lot closer than I thought it would be. Alright, so, and again, just constant water. Oh man, using a liner brush is always very, very difficult, because the movement of it and the way that you have to kind of push the paint off of it is a lot different than a normal brush. But you get a lot better detail. You get a lot better movement in general, because there is more water and you're able to flow over the paint. So you're able to kind of figure out, I mean, like things like this, where I'm going to try and make an individual line here and another one over on this, you know, ridge of paint. Kind of working out what probably would be better is if I just use some white in between it. Thinking about that, I think that may be exactly what I'm going to do to try to just justify this later, so that it looks a little bit more like the image. But that's not bad at all. Alright, let's move on here. Try to keep going. And you know, usually when I'm doing any painting, this is the paintbrush that's in my hand most of the time, because you'll find that, you know, you get down most of the big stuff, and then you have only the need to make details to try to draw things out, or at least that's what I find with my paintings. You know, like we're not even doing any of the other stuff before we do the flower, because, you know, we can help to use all of those other colors and those other areas to help define it, and they aren't nearly as important. And again, we're trying to get this done within a time frame of a few hours, so, because if you're trying to do a series of paintings, like I said before, it can become very tiresome if you're doing the same painting over the course of several days. It can be incredibly tiresome. And, you know, especially when it's something that's fairly simple, like a butterfly or a. It's not too bad. Let's maybe make that a little bit darker. But if it's something simple like a series of butterflies, like I've done before, or what I'm trying to do now, which is a series of flowers going A through Z, it can be very, very tiring to find yourself bogged down trying to do what is a fairly simple painting if you have painted for a long period of time. And you know, when you go and you do all of the shading and whatnot beforehand, you try to get it so that it's starting to get the right image. You get better at it, and once you understand how to properly mix paints, and it doesn't take you forever to get what this color was that I've just kind of been able to enact here, and it's not perfect. Probably needs some other red that I need to go and search out somewhere in my drawer of paints, but it will be a fine starting shade for the general definitions that we're trying to pull out here. And so here we've already gotten to the part in the painting where my laziness and my inability to keep my hand not resting on the canvas is a problem. But make it work. So we can go through again with black colors with whites and other small shading colors to really help define all of these veins throughout the petals. But even then we can see that we're really starting to get something a lot better than what we began with. Though this back petal here, you can see needs this to have been drawn over to here, and the whole of this needs to be kind of in a bit more of a slant to help define its angle, I suppose. Let's try and pull these out. Alright. And so, when you're doing these same things, but when it comes to like a face, those small, changes can be the difference between actually having definition in the face or not. And that small little smudge I had to do could be you having to redo something for hours or some ridiculous thing. And so, we're being fairly cautious right now, but you'll see that caution levels will go up a tremendous amount when you are getting closer to finished things. You're doing some of these flourishes that are going on the sides. Then you'll definitely start to find yourself being a great deal more cautious. We do have a few more things that we should do with these colors before we put them away. So let me clear this off. I'll get our normal paintbrush back out. And and get these two things on the side colored in as well. Alright. So that's nice. Make sure that we get everything related to any of the colors that we're using on our paintbrushes now, hopefully colored in on some level. And just apply more paint when you got too much charcoal in one area or another. It's kind of what we were dealing with over here. But then we can go like this and try to reinvigorate. this area so I know to put something there. Alright. And then, what have we got? We got this other side over here, this guy. Okay. And again, I can feel paint on my finger, so, getting to that point where we've got paint so far moved along each side of the canvas that, you really got to be careful so that you're not smearing or doing anything stupid. And I mean, that does count for the charcoal, but it counts a lot more for the paint itself. Okay, so there we are. Gonna need to reinvigorate some of those darker lines. Well, it doesn't look like it, looking at the actual image. If anything, those darker lines are something I created to help give definition. Alright. And then we'll try to strengthen those. Try to use those reds in the same areas there. And then what we'll do is we'll take some time in between those two areas to do some of the green areas and let all of this other stuff settle and dry a little bit. So we'll take our liner brush and go underneath there in a bit. You can see now a little bit more definition coming out with the reds against the whites against the grays that have the mixes of charcoal in them, and we're starting to get a little bit better definition out of some of these guys. Alright. So, yeah, and you can see how nice those whites really are sparking up now that the other ones have kind of dried a bit. And that, we were basically able to get on another layer. And we've got a nice kind of sparked up looking petal now. Whereas before there was maybe just not a long or not a deep enough layer going into the canvas of paint, and now we've got one that makes it so that those whites are really kind of sparking, and we can still have other colors in there as well to really give us a nice kind of definition. Which is good. Alright. Oh, we did it right there. And then we can go back through with our white with the liner brush and try to put some highlights in some of the veins of the petals. But already I'm liking this a little bit more, with some of these whites helping to spark some of this a little bit better than it was before. And you can see that we've helped to create some definition with some of our more textured amounts of paint that we used, which is definitely creating a nice image as we continue to add more paints. Yeah, that looks actually very decent. And even though the whites are kind of fading a little bit as they dry a little bit more and mixing with the other paints underneath, I still think that it will be a good overall look in comparison to what we were maybe dealing with moments ago. So I wanted to go and fix that with my finger, but my finger is just a bit too wide for that, and so I need to use the back of the brush here instead. Oh, so yeah. Well, we've been live for about an hour, which isn't really a big deal, but it's right about the time where I normally would feed all of the animals. So they're starting to get all antsy. I do need to start feeding them later, though, as the sun's getting to coming out later and staying out later. So I do need to kind of shift them over anyway. So we'll keep going for now. Try our best to, power through here and get as much of this done as we can. And, if we find, as we're continuing that there just isn't much to the image, we'll try to spark it up a little bit with, maybe some dot structures or something else. And like give this a series of purple dots throughout it, kind of like a Mona Lisa lily or something like that. But for now, we're going to just keep going and see whether or not it just will look decent on an overall basis. Now we've got to get our liner brush out again, I believe. Yep, definitely. Excuse me. All right, well, so let's get this liner brush out again. And get some of our purple colors here. All right, and then we will start over on this one here. Something like that. We can go clean it up later with the needs a little bit more of these purples here. The right colors. Okay. And then we'll do the same over here. Probably need some of the browns though this time. Make these colors work properly instead of just purple. Yeah. Okay. So this is a lighter brown. Not gonna really do what I want out of it. Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna have to get a darker color here. Again, how about burnt umber? That's a darker brown. Okay. Alright, so some burnt umber here will help to fix this color here. And some of those lighter browns are kind of coming into play now as being semi-useful. Okay. Alright. Some purples here and there, that's not bad. Okay, it's not completely off. I'm going to do that and bring this over like it says it is in there. Should be a little bit thinner though, so I may have to go over with the white and do that again. Same with this, and we'll do that. Alright. Okay, so that's not the worst. It could be worse. Alright, so let's take some of these colors now, not with the liner brush, and try to apply some of them throughout the whole of the painting as needed. Mostly because they're out, so we'll, take advantage of them being out. As much as possible, anyway, we will. Okay. Alright, where else do we got these things? How about here? Okay, a small line just for the vein. Alright. Keep going here with these same browns that we have available. Okay. And need a little bit of the darks over here. Alright. Anywhere else where it's just essential? Okay, let's move over to the lighter browns real quick. Probably going to need to mix those with the darker browns. And that is just to do some highlights. A little bit of highlighting here. Okay. Kind of dangerous to do highlights like that, so close to another color scheme that is especially lighter than it. That is to say, to use your finger like that to help smudge it, which can be very useful. Smudging stuff, moving the paint a little bit with your fingers or your hands. Okay, let's see, we'll try to get a little bit of these colored in here with some of these colors. Okay, I'm gonna go back over with the lighter even than this. Okay, let's go even lighter. Maybe even get some whites in here in a moment, because this needs to be even lighter. Yep. Put some white. Just kind of mix it on the canvas as best we can. Leave a nice ridge, light on the top. There we go. Okay. Looks like that still needs even more white all along here. Just lighten up all of these colors. Okay, let's try to do the same over here just slightly. Well, we got some of these real light highlights. Okay. Alright. We've got a few more things down lower here that we need to tend to. Just a bit more out of focus. Same with here. That's about as high as they get to, it looks like. Okay. Oh. Probably gonna need to. Yeah, we'll end up undoing that. Let it draw itself over. Alright, well, let's start adding a little bit more color in some of these other areas. We can, leave it kind of innocuous like it is in the picture necessarily. We don't have to make, heavy definitions. Okay, now I think I'm going to get another paintbrush because it just sounds like the thing to do at the time. This is a good one. I think that maybe this guy will actually be what we're going to use right now. Help to put on a lot of paint, a lot of these areas. Usually we use this for something like making a Everest tree or something along those lines. You can put on a good deal of the paint and then go like this and make Everest trees, but that's not what we're doing right now. What we're doing is probably just trying to add on some paint. And get a little bit more definition for everything else that we're doing here. We'll add in a little bit of whites there too. Try to help throw in a little bit more shading and interest in here, even though we're starting to do just a base layer. Let's see. Yeah, this is not turning out bad at all. Nice simple base layer here. Just keep moving it on down the line here. I have to move this a little bit. And look how nice that helps to define that. Some of these areas we obviously are going to need to use a smaller brush because I just cannot get in there with this big honking thing. But we're already starting to see a little bit nicer look to this. A little bit less faded, which is that look that you'll get from just a bunch of charcoal that's been rubbed. It's got a nice hazy look, I suppose, but it's not really that great. So here we are. This is really starting to actually look decent. I'm fine with this. This is fine. Yeah, look at that. Isn't that decent? All right. And painting is fun. It's an enjoyable time. But it's also, as you can see, can be a very, very taxing effort because you're doing stuff that can take you know a lot of effort, a lot of concentration, take a lot of time, and and you have to balance all those things and try to get something done as we are here, trying to do it in a period of time, not an endless time. It can be very difficult. It can be very taxing, and can be even a chore. But having said all those things, here we are. We started out with nothing, and we are moving towards more of something. Something to be commended, I think. Alright, so let's get out something, maybe a bigger, excuse me, had a taco salad, and it's not fighting me, it's fine, but it's a little excessive for my poor form. So we're going to take some of these colors that we've already mixed with a little bit of water, and we're going to go in here and we're going to touch up some of these areas that don't have any paint whatsoever on them yet. Mostly because we didn't want to have to go and retrack over our previous work too much. You go and you put a huge swath of paint over something, you're going to have to go and fix it, and it's going to take a while, and it may take several layers, and I can't tell you how annoying it gets to go and redo several layers of paint. But if you go and you're doing it with something like this, where you're making sure that you don't have to have all of those extra layers, because you've got a nice thin small amount of paint that you're trying to spread over these little tiny nooks and crannies that help to make these heavy definitions here. Yeah, use the big brushes for when you need them, and then use these little brushes for obviously when you need them. And it's very hard to define when you need certain brushes for any purposes. I mean, you can see here that we didn't apply too much paint over on this top area, and that's not so great. We need a bit more paint over on some of these top area here. Alright, that's nice. That's a bit better. Just a bit more paint. Not in there though. That's okay. At least we still got that nice definition from our charcoal. And likewise over here. Yeah, looking good. Looking completely decent. Need some work. Gonna need some, more highlights. But, I mean, we haven't even gotten, a first layer of paint on some areas still. Like this. Like right next to it. So, we got work. We got lots of work to do. Basically. But, the thing is about work that once it's done, it's done. You get to enjoy it for what it's worth. And when it's a large project, it's even, better to, do it and to get it done. It's much better to have it done than to do it, obviously. But it is a pretty grand thing to get done with, certain things. Like a large project of, an artistic form. And why is that? Because you'll see it, actually in the art itself. If you do something that's, you know, what this is going to be is, 50, or not 50, it's going to be 26 different flowers of different names, A through Z, at least in the English language. Um, then when you put that up on a wall altogether, you'll see the value of it a little bit more. It's hard to see when there's only just one of them. It's hard to see even when there's only two or three or even six. You start to see it a little bit more as you get into those higher numbers. But, when you're talking about, value, when you get into a real high number of uh, paintings within a series, they really start to spike up in value. Even when they're not necessarily, masterpiece works, but they're good representations. When you've got, 6 butterflies or something, that's okay. But when you've got 50 of them, you'll start to see that, kind of how much cooler it is and how much more interesting, that large series can be. But having said that, doing even a really, really great painting that, you try to do with a masterpiece level of artistry could be just as good, if not much better. I suppose it really just depends on what it is that you're searching for, what it is that you're wanting out of your work. And that's why I like series a little bit more, because with a series, at the very least, you can say, oh, well, even if nobody else in the world appreciates it, you can say it has an appreciative value to someone if they were to see it. And that's important. It is very important that you have true appreciative value of something when it is actually seen in a relative sense by other people. Having said that, I mean, you can do things that some people might not find to have any relative value, like heavy abstract, artwork. And you might find that, some people will say that it's not any good. I might even be one of those people, depending on what it is that you're actually talking about. Because I find abstraction and abstract, artwork usually pretty dull and pretty childish, almost. Almost like hey, pay me for this even though it's shit. Or at least the great artist, I felt like, kind of did that when they went into some abstraction before, or at least when they were in some other form before then. So, this isn't looking horrid. It's not looking perfect. It feels as if it just needs a lot of work, which is, what we're doing. We still don't even have a defined stem yet. We need to do that. So why don't we go ahead and get that done. I need to clean off this paintbrush. It's getting a little bit doused. Okay. Well, try and get this defined stem out here. Okay. Alright. Well, that's not terrible. At least having 0 highlights on it. It's not the worst. Okay. What do I think this needs? It needs to be drawn over the other way, even though it feels to me like it needs to be drawn over this way. So why don't we go ahead and turn this around so we can draw this over a bit. Get a little bit more water here. All right. Okay. All right. That's not so bad. Oh, unfortunately, though, it looks like I might have put the light shade on the wrong side. Try and pull that over here as well. Okay. I did that mostly with just a lot of extra water, helping us to get some of those extra shades out of there. We'll see how they work out as it dries. But that looks pretty good. It actually is not bad at all. About what we were going for if we were going for anything. Yeah, it's really not horrid. It's about right. Get some of this in there and just help it just kind of fade out some of these areas. And now we're probably going to take some whites and try to just move them throughout some of these spaces and give a little bit more texture and meaning to some of these areas. Whether that's going to happen or not, or we're just going to ruin some of the images is, you know, up to debate. We're not actually trying to put in any massive levels of detail, but instead trying to create more of a haze that actually looks, you know, functional and normal. And that, you know, might have been what we did over there. You know, we don't want to spend too much time on these areas here, and the reason why is because, you know, we want to try to spend as much of the time that we're trying to allot to doing this on the flower itself. And, you know, for what it's worth, we're moving pretty quick. Could be a bit slower. You know, I said that. I feel like I made a bit of a mistake with a little bit of over-exemplification of this, you know, color here. That's okay. I'll just throw a little bit of white on there. Maybe even pull a little bit of the actual paint off. And from there, and keep adding this phthalo blue up and throughout this side. And on the opposite side, we'll add the, I don't remember what they called it, emerald green or something green. But it's essentially, if you go and you look in a store, it's essentially hooker's green, which is a very dark green. We'll use that on the opposite side for shading, even though this is getting to be a bit trite looking. So we'll add a little bit of whites here and there to try and reestablish a little bit more, I don't know what you would call it, not just realism, but, you know, probably definition, I think, is what I'm really trying to talk about. And that's not bad at all looking there. Let's try and do just a tiny bit more of that bit strong there. And just overdue. All right. So that's not bad. This is right there. There it is. Okay. Do the same up in some of these other areas that have this heavy blues. There we are. That's nice, especially on that area there. Okay. So, and a tiny bit in this little space just to help it adjust and look somewhat like everywhere else. Oh, especially against the side of the stock here. All right. Okay. So that's not looking so bad. It's not looking that amazing either, but you know, that's fine. Let's try and do a little bit of definitional work over on this opposite side with the darker color. Feels like a lot of it's already kind of been done for us by just not having a lot of the phthalo blue in there. So maybe we just need to work on some of these higher areas here that seem to be a little bit lighter. Okay. Maybe I need a little bit of water here to help spread this around as I'm trying to go. Not right there, though. Yeah, that's much better. Oh, that's all right. See, as big as a mistake as that was, you know, you can see how much more massive it could be with a larger brush. And you know, you're trying to get this done, you're trying to move, you're trying to do things fairly quickly, so you'll make those mistakes. And you'll make a big mistake and you'll cover up something like a nose. And you'll be like, oh, shit. That nose was looking perfect, and now I've got a big mark on it that I need to literally go and fix. And you'll hate yourself for it. But that's okay. Because you'll go and you'll fix the nose up, and then it'll look fine. Alright, so looking really decent here. I think a little bit of, you know, some whites to help, you know, offset some of these colors might be good. But looking really decent. Again, we're trying, you know, desperately to just give this a little bit more definition, a little bit more, you know, of a nuance and ambiance without having to put in a lot of extra things. A bit childish, a bit grade school, you know, in the nature of it. But, you know, even in the actual photograph, you know, all of the outline areas are actually out of focus. So it's not completely out of step with what we are trying to do. And look at that. That's looking actually very, very nice. It's got a very decent, you know, overall look to it. Yeah, that's absolutely decent and fine. If anything, you know, this feels like maybe as this is transitioning over here, this needs just a little bit more whites mixed with some of these, you know, darker greens. And then we'll have ourselves what I would say is a pretty decent little transition step over into this phthalo blue color. Okay. Not so bad. Could look better, could look worse. Some of these whites are a little bit strong here. Okay. So now I feel like we're really much more within the pall. That is to say that we're getting a much more, within the nature of what we want it to look like versus what, it was before, which was a blank canvas. Um, Feeling pretty good about this. Is looking pretty nice. Definitely needs a lot of work, and we need to do our final definitional things on our flower. Meaning we need to go back and do another layer. We need to, so we might need some more white already. We're at an hour and a half. I've got some animals to feed. Could just get back to this later and do 2 parts. I guess that's okay. You know, we've done something here. It's not great yet, but definitely. Oh, here we are. Definitely, getting there. In need of a great deal of work still, it looks like. But, definitely, working towards, an image which is, I don't know if it's commensurate, but which one could say is a summer asphodel. And, if that's not good enough, well, shit. Guess it's not good enough. Alright, so I think we're going to finish this up in the next stream. Maybe we'll do that a little bit later tonight. Not quite sure. I want to kind of get this done because, like I said, if you're doing a series of paintings, you really want to get, the painting done. Yeah, what we'll say is that I've got, some things to go do. Once I'm done with them, I'll probably return and we'll finish the painting at that point. And, if not, then God help me because I'll have to finish it tomorrow. But, I've given myself a slightly smaller series to end up doing this year than the larger, amount, which was, a 50 part series. This being a 26 part isn't so bad. So I'm going to call it there, though. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I will see you hopefully in a little while, and if not, well then God help me because I'll be working on this tomorrow instead of tonight. And like I said, God help me. God help us all. If that's the case. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll be back with part 2 in a short time.